Thank you very much. Talking of Wednesday mornings, I was at a dinner last week, and somebody was commenting about meeting somebody else in Australia and said the big joke in Australia was never have a meeting on a Wednesday because you ruin 2 weekends. So thank you all for making it here. I've been asked not to give a self-serving speech, so I'm going to give you a completely self-serving speech. I won't talk about TV3 too much, but there will be a bit in the middle. As you know, in TV3 we're fond of our ad breaks, so I'll let you know when that's coming up. Thank you all also for being here to forgo the excitement of, I think, what are the last 4 hours of the presidential campaign. And at this stage, I think it's all up for grabs. Anything can happen. Anybody could win. And then we hit this bizarre thing we have called a broadcast moratorium at 2 o'clock. And the actual legislation says that there is a moratorium to provide for a period of reflection, which seems entirely unnecessary given the 7 candidates we have and the 6 months of debate we've had so far. I also am glad to be speaking at breakfast. There's an interesting thing around Ireland AM that part of my background is as a bookseller. It's where I started my career. And the marketing of books is always a very interesting thing because you've got to get to a particular audience. But booksellers coming out to TV3 in the morning for Ireland AM, they actually swear that Ireland AM, or breakfast television, if there is any other breakfast television in the country, breakfast television is the best place to sell because it's when there is the highest propensity to buy. So that when somebody is promoting a book, the viewer then has the whole day to consider after watching it, maybe drop the kids off at school, or they go into work and in their lunch break they've time to go down to a bookstore and buy a book. So although Ireland AM per quarter hour would have a much, much lower audience than, say, the Late Late Show, when books are promoted in the Late Late Show, people go, oh, that's really interesting, must do something about that book. And then in our best fashion, we go to bed and we get up the next morning and we've completely forgotten about it. Breakfasts have another advantage. I remember being invited to an event a couple of years ago by one of your sister organisations, the AAI. I was due to speak at 7 p.m. and I asked Ed how long I should speak for, and he said, you can speak for as long as you like, but we're all going for a pint at 7:30. So I do realise you have desks to get to, and you're probably eager to get to them, so I won't keep you too long. I think our industry, the media industry, the advertising industry, the marketing industry, is on its knees. We have to face the stark and brutal facts about where we are and actually not pull our punches. Advertising revenues have more than halved, peak to trough, since 2007. Now that puts this industry, the industry that we're all part of, somewhere in with bankers and developers as being the big losers in the recession. In addition to that, not only is the whole revenue base for our industry collapsing, there's also an exodus, and it's been much commented on in the press, of brand and marketing management to the UK. I think the majority of Nestle has gone, O2 Creative has gone, even half of Kerry Foods marketing is now done from the UK. In fact, it was Dara Byrne from TV3 who told me this, said half of Kerry's advertising has gone there, and it's like the old adage about advertising, you don't know which half works, so we don't know which city is going to work now. Procurement departments and media auditors have turned advertising and marketing really from being an engine for growth into being the lowest denominator of cost per thousands. Now, just in case there are any procurement people here, and in many ways marketing people are procurement people, and if there are any media auditors here, I absolutely appreciate the function that media auditors have and the function that procurement departments have. But I think it's more actually a criticism of us, the marketeers, that we have actually not managed to instill a balance into our industry so that we are not facing the whole time discussions of cost, but we get back to discussions about return on investment, which is the whole reason why we exist. I think a final trend at the moment, which is really killing the industry, is the level of discounting and price promotion. I spent much of my career in the United States, where price promotion is extremely active and is had a much higher profile than, for example, in the UK, where I also spent much of my career. But price promotion there somehow is something that goes with brand. It's not something that goes instead of brand. And I think there has been a real issue here through the recession about how brand has been lost at the expense of discounting and price promotion, which has reduced margins and starved advertising budgets. So these are symptoms of an industry that is in real trouble. I think more worryingly, when I read back that speech that I gave to the AAI 2 years ago, I was actually saying the exact same things. So this seems to be in this industry living proof of that oft-quoted Rita Mae Brown quote about the definition of madness, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that really is the situation that we are in now. So if we want 2012 and 2013 and 2014, if we want them to be different, if we want 2012 for all of us in this room to be maybe meeting here in a year's time and to have 10% growth under our belts, rather than, say, 5% or 10% decline, we must change, and we must change now. So I want to describe 4 strategies that I believe you or we as professional marketeers must adopt to make the change. The first is one that, again, from my background, I started off in bookselling. I started off in Waterstones, became great friends with a brilliant marketeer called Tim Waterstone. But my principal career was all around operations. It's all around management, general management and operations, and not actually around marketing. And I remember when I was in Waterstones and running 200 stores throughout Britain and Ireland, and with brilliant teams of people and getting everything to work. And the marketing department was the department having all the fun. The marketing department was the team which was doing the interesting work, was out with the publishers, was out at the dinners. And it struck me that the first thing that I wanted to say in terms of what you or we must all do as marketeers is to bring marketing right back into the heart of your business. Involve your CEOs and your CFOs. Let them share in the marketing job. Bring them to ad pitches. Bring them into TV3. Bring them to focus groups. Involve them in how you're building your research. If you don't involve your CEO or your CFO, it should be no surprise to you that when it comes to the budget round, that your budget is cut, because there is no reason why they should particularly understand the specialism, the skill and the professionalism that you bring to your work if they do not see it in action. And the single biggest thing I think that all of you can do to put yourselves in a position for 2012 to maximize your budgets, and I'll come on to show why that is so necessary, but the best thing you can do is every minute of every day you should worry about who you're not involving in the decisions that you're making about marketing in your company. You're the leaders of the top line of in your businesses, and I think it's up to you to stop others. You know, an oft-quoted line that indeed I've used as a CEO and I hear others using, and you've got to stop them using it, is this line about somehow saying, oh, well, we're just getting well positioned for when the markets come back. Well, markets don't come back. If markets come back, we don't need you. Our CEOs and CFOs don't need us. Markets don't come back. We go and we find markets and we identify markets and we grow markets. And that is a critical piece of thinking that you need to bring in to your businesses who, after 2 or 3 years of recession, have actually forgotten about the role of marketing. So don't let the marketing budget be the variable line. It is simply madness. And for any of you who are CEOs or CFOs here, I'd say to you, it's simply madness to cut the marketing budget when your top line is declining. Now, I'm getting stares from Deirdre Macklin, who's TV3's head of marketing, because she had her marketing budget cut in August. And now we could do that because we can do our own marketing on air, our own advertising on air. But I'll be very honest with you, it's not a decision that I'm proud of, and it's one that I would revisit and I'd be very careful not to do again, because I think it is absolutely vital that right at this point that we begin to spend again so that we can begin to grow our top lines. So that's the first general point, which is really about us as a profession and about you as professionals, which is to bring marketing back to the heart of your business. The second one, which is also very general, is to restore a belief in advertising. Old-fashioned advertising and mass media, the old media, is actually the new media and is actually the fashion outside of Ireland. The hottest book in marketing right now, which Dara Birmingham provided, is How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp. And that book argues that brands need reach to grow. And again, it takes some of the basic things we all learnt about marketing, where we learnt about, don't have wastage, don't promote too generally, make sure you target your audience. And actually, what Byron Sharp argues is the opposite. He is arguing and saying, actually, coverage is everything. That brands grow through light users, not heavy users. And that brands grow from their bigness. So in other words, it is actually the scale of a brand that makes the brand popular, if that's not tautologous. So you have to get big, your brand is more popular, and you get bigger again. So that is an essential lesson that we again need to remind our CEOs and our CFOs and our businesses about how brands grow. Brands don't grow through niche marketing, or very rarely through niche marketing. They don't grow through just saying, well, I've got this specific audience. Social media, for example, we use very heavily in TV3. We're one of the leaders in it. We're the leaders in what we produce ourselves in terms of social media. And Stephen Grant, who many of you know, heads our online. But we also use social media as a company for promoting Expose, or Ireland AM, or different programs we have. But where its real use is as research, as a feedback loop, as knowledge, and giving us the expertise around our brand and giving us the information. Where it's not so useful is in terms of building and growing a brand. Yes, it can absolutely support it, and there's great research that says online as part of the mix with television is extremely powerful, because you're getting both elements of mass market coverage and targeted audience. But what Byron Sharp is arguing, it is coverage that really matters. He also argues, interestingly, that because it's light consumers who build brands more than heavy consumers, that it is emotional advertising that is required. This idea of differentiating product is not so strong. It says, consumers don't have the fine attention that we have to our own product. They don't differentiate our product so much. They just look at what's big. They just look and go, oh, well, I see this. That's the product I'm going to get. But the emotional piece is something that can really support that. So it's back to good creative and good emotional advertising. I think as part of this theme of belief in advertising, we have to come back to old-fashioned ideas like share of voice, but particularly to return on investment. Return on investment is the critical measure. It's not all about cost per thousand. ThinkBox, the UK consultancy, has shown that television in the UK returns £1.70 for every £1 spent. I mean, that is a massive return. And yes, of course, I will talk about television, and I think there's some of our colleagues from RTE, and I'm always glad to be in a room with RTE. But it is true that television has performed well to deliver that very high return on investment. So when your CEOs and CFOs are looking at cutting costs further, you've got to remind them that the cost they're cutting, for each euro they cut, they are losing the potential to earn €1.70 through advertising. I see some of the things that have happened here. Some companies here have performed brilliantly through the recession. Jacobs, I think, as we were talking at the table about Jacobs and what they have done, and Loretta Dignam's campaigns for what I think she has called, used to be known as granny biscuits, her campaigns for those to make them contemporary and modern and attractive and actually increase the emotional appeal, has hugely increased their spontaneous awareness and purchase statistics. She's made Figaro, L'Elite and Malo brands that are contemporary and relevant. So advertising does work, and we just need to remind ourselves before we go in and argue the cases around our board table for budgets. So that is the second piece, belief in advertising. The third is something that, of course, again, we would say and I would believe in. Anybody who knows me would, I've lived in the US, I've lived in the UK, my wife's in Britain, I'm not a hugely patriotic person, but boy do I believe now, more than ever, that we need to believe in Ireland, we need to believe in this country, and we need to buy Irish. So my third message really is sell Ireland and buy Irish. If you represent a multinational, and many of you do here, and you're fighting for your budget, and you're fighting for a global budget, and if you're not fighting for a global budget, you're certainly fighting for a UK budget and an Ireland budget or a European budget. We need to make sure, you need to make sure that you sell Ireland. We're more aware of what is happening here than people are abroad. We're more up to date. The truth is that certainly in the UK, where I'd spend a lot of my time, we are still viewed, in part, as if we're Greece. And actually, by the way, maybe that's unfair in Greece, but we're still viewed as if we're Greece, or as if we're a country which is broke and is in real trouble. That just simply isn't true, and those messages need to be corrected. There is money in Ireland, but what's happening to money in Ireland, as we as an industry have by and large stopped advertising, stopped marketing and stopped promoting, or we're doing it at a level that we can cope with in a recession, the money in Ireland is being saved every day rather than spent. The savings ratio, and again I said this 2 years ago, the savings ratio 2 years ago jumped from 4%, which has always been typically the savings ratio in Ireland. I used to be in the Board of Bank Scotland here, and all these statistics came true, and it was incredibly steady, that savings ratio. And it jumped 2.5 years ago to 12%. And actually, it's maintained that level. I think I saw the other day somebody saying it was up as high as 14%. And that seems impossible to many of us who don't have anybody, or you can't make your money meet at the end of the month, but people are still saving for pensions, and those who have money are still keeping it. So there is money in the country. The reality is maybe we're not giving those people with money the confidence to spend and the reasons to buy. I think last week when Pat Kiley and myself went around some of the agencies to talk about the recent Competition Authority ruling, and we were meeting the top 5 agencies, one head of the agencies said a statement I thought was really interesting. He says, do you know what? This thing around consumer confidence and everything, I get confidence in the economy when I see banks advertising. And it's so true. That is the moment at which you start saying, right, there is something coming back, and there is something here. So, in Ireland, we have money. You need to sell that message abroad. The other message you can sell abroad around Ireland is that the Irish economy has gone through the fiscal adjustment that other economies are about to go through. We're owned by private equity in the UK. They would take a pretty bearish view about, and their investments are pretty much all in Europe, 1 or 2 in the US, and they take a very bearish view of where the economies in particularly Western Europe, the UK and the US are heading. And Ireland has actually been through the fiscal adjustment. We might not have wanted to go through it. I sure as hell don't feel any better for it. But it is a reason why we will come out of recession faster. It might well be that when you're competing for your global budget, that you're saying to people, look, if the budget you're spending in Europe, Ireland is your best place to be putting money next year. It's your best place in 2012. It's the best positioned economy in Western Europe to begin a recovery. And that alongside the message that people here have money is very important. Of course, when we talk and we see what's happening here also around the confidence that companies have to locate here. Okay, it's not saying they're not here necessarily for the Irish market, but there is something around Google and Twitter and Facebook and others who see Ireland as a great place to be and a place to base their businesses. So that message is around selling Ireland for those of you who have multinational accounts. For those of you whose accounts are domestic and you're in Ireland, actually for all of you, buy Irish. It is so important to buy Irish media. Every time you spend with UK-based media, you risk your job and you risk this industry. Because the reality is, if we do not support the distinctiveness of Irish media, whether that be newspapers, whether it be the Irish Times or the Indo or TV3 or RTE, or if you do not support Irish media, we are going to simply be left with schedules on television which are UK schedules. And UK schedules, if you talk to Ben Frau, our UK broadcast, our UK programmes director, he'll say to you, the schedules are very different. Tea is at a different time. I'm not sure they call it tea, I think they call it dinner, but that's at a different time. And programmes work at different times, so schedules don't work. The content needs to be different. The content needs to be Irish. Otherwise, we simply become a Western Shire of the UK. So it is absolutely vital that you support Irish media, because Irish media provides you with a reason for you to exist in terms of your companies, your global companies, and it also ensures that the Irish market, if we believe in the Irish market, that we're supporting the Irish market, not just the Irish industry, but we're supporting our viewers or our customers or our readers. So that's the third message. The fourth one is something that, again, from my background, is something I believe is a critical element in marketing, and it might be that it's becoming a new element in marketing. I spent part of my career in Aircom, and where I had the benefit of working with Tony O'Reilly, probably the greatest marketeer this country's ever produced. And I thought that working with him would all be about brand and what you do with brands and how you sell and how you attract your customers. And he said, no, you need to go much deeper. You need to go really deep into your whole market, the idea of a market, and you need to say and identify what are the blockages in a market. What's blocking you from getting to a market, or what's blocking a market from getting to you, or even what's blocking you from seeing what the market is? What is the myopia that is causing you not to be able to identify your customers or to be able to get to them? And this is all about regulation and government. I think one of the best schemes that I've seen in Ireland in the past 2 or 3 years by an Irish marketeer was done by Renault. Renault identified this problem. They saw a lot of people driving around in 10 or 15-year-old cars. These people don't like giving up something for nothing. They don't like leaving a car for nothing. It's also quite difficult just to leave a car. And yet they couldn't get trade-ins on their cars. So Renault pretty much invented the scrappage scheme. First of all, by them themselves pushing scrappage as an idea, and then by convincing government to go with scrappage as a process. That last year completely, now some of you here will probably be in the car industry, I'm sure it's pretty tough, but compared to 2 years ago, completely revived the industry. It's revived the industry so that we now have on television a brand campaign for BMW Ireland. Not just for BMW, BMW Ireland, because scrappage worked, it got the industry going again, and quite rightly and quite deservedly, Renault were the principal beneficiary of it. That, to me, is absolutely the best thing a marketeer can do. Identify deep down what is the fundamental thing that needs to change in your industry. For us, in TV3, we identified 2 things that were problems we had. And this is probably the ad break, I'll be quick around TV3. The first problem is that we weren't distinctive enough. When I joined TV3 and joined actually a great team in TV3, had done a great job to build up market share, but we weren't distinctive enough. It wasn't clear enough why you, as marketeers or as advertisers, should invest in TV3. We needed to be different. So we invested very heavily in Irish programming. We doubled our output from 20% to 40% of our schedule. We invested very heavily in the TV3 brand. We did so much brand work and so many brand workshops over the past year that even our CFO has all of the brand work above his desk. And it's not pretty pictures, it's all words, defining our brand, understanding what it is. So we are all on brand and we're investing according to our brand. And of course, we cleaned up our on-air image, and we've presented ourselves in a different way. We did all of that because we knew a barrier for our customers, for our market, and we deal in two directions. One direction is to you as marketeers and advertisers, the other direction is to our viewers. In both directions, we need to become more distinctive. But the other one, and it comes back to the Renault example and the idea of regulation and getting very deep into your industries, was we identified a blockage for you as advertisers. And that blockage was that RTE ran share deals, which obliged you pretty much to spend over 65% of your budget with them. Now, from my background in regulation, that is what's known as an exclusionary deal. It's foreclosing a market, and it's a red card in terms of competition. I think for RTE it might have been different because they were coming into a market where they were the only player and other players were coming along. But we needed to accelerate that change. So we went and lobbied the government and we lobbied the BAI, the Broadcast Authority. We didn't get anywhere with them. In fact, a government minister, when Pat Cawley and I met him, he said, look, I'm not doing anything. If you've got a problem, go to the Competition Authority. So we did. So we went to the Competition Authority and it took 2 years. And finally, after 2 years, RT has agreed to drop those share deals. And I think that in our own small way, we've done something for ourselves, which is to make sure people can advertise or can spend their money with us more easily. But I think we've also done something for the marketing industry, which is to give advertisers the freedom to spend their money where they wish. That to me is about a role that all of us as marketeers can play to unblock our industry. One which I mentioned earlier was this whole issue of discounting. You know, price is clearly a barrier for consumers, and we have to be real about that. And we all know that price is one of the major jobs we face, to get that pricing mix right. But discounting too heavily and relentlessly has diminished many brands in the past few years. I don't want to sound like an old-fashioned Irish bishop, but discounting leads to one thing, and that's promiscuity. You know, it causes promiscuous customers, and it doesn't build the loyalty that you want to build around your brands. The company, and there will be some companies here, but the company who took completely the opposite track was probably the greatest and the most famous marketeers in the world, who would be Procter & Gamble, you know, up there with Procter & Gamble or Unilever and all them. But Procter & Gamble, they adopted the opposite strategy. In August of this year, it reported quarterly results driven by 3% price increases and investment in advertising, leading to top-line growth of 10%. Bob McDonald, the P&G chief executive, said, and I quote, "We expect any value growth to be driven by higher pricing," unquote. Now that to me is a growth strategy. That's somebody who absolutely understands the value of their products and the value of their brands and fights for them. Yes, it's somebody who's a lot of power, and you don't have necessarily that power with retailers or with others or with whoever's selling your products, but it is something which we all need to be much stronger about. I'll be very honest, in terms of TV3, you know, we've been selling advertising below cost because RTE's been selling advertising below cost. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't see a media outlet in Ireland over the past year who probably hasn't been selling its advertising below cost. Well, that's over. It's not going to happen anymore, and it can't go on anymore. The procurement departments have done a good job, but that can't continue. We've got to invest in our business, so we've got to get growth back. And likewise, for you to be able to invest, you need to manage that whole pricing piece. So those are our four things that I think we need to do, and you know, I don't pretend there's any great genius. You're expert marketeers, I'm an amateur marketeer, but to me they're the things that need to happen. Firstly, bring marketing back to the heart of your business, involve your CEOs, your CFOs, your operations directors, the man who makes the widgets, involve all of them. The second one, believe in advertising, believe in mass market advertising, believe in coverage, believe in return on investment, and believe in emotional brand building. The third one is sell Ireland. Sell Ireland if you have customers abroad. Please sell Ireland. We're going to do our best to do it. And please buy Irish, so that you've got Irish media that gives us a very distinctive market and a very distinctive reason to exist. And then the fourth one is go deep. Go beyond marketing. Go right deep into your industry and find out what the blockages are and resolve them. So those are really the four things that we could do to change the narrative and see real growth in 2012. I'll repeat what I said to the AAI a couple of years ago and what I'll be saying next month. I have to go to a conference in London, a public policy fellowship I'm in, and there's a very highfalutin debate around choice and freedom. But I'll be saying the same thing, which is that the marketing profession, your profession, our profession, it has a noble purpose. It has a purpose which is to drive growth in the economy, to encourage choice, and to give confidence to people. So please, please make sure that each of you do your job, and we'll try to do our job as professional marketeers to ensure 2012 is a year of marketing and of growth. And let us in media, and in TV3 in particular, help you. We are absolutely on your side, and we will do everything to help you win your battles within your companies to bring marketing back to the top of the agenda. So let us support you to win your debates in your companies, and thank you very much.